Hello and welcome to another recording of the SEO Huddle. Today is just the three of us. You've got myself, Dan Taylor, Cindy Crome returning after a slightly short stint in Europe, so there was a little bit of jet lag involved, and the gentleman with the wild hair, Jerry. Hi to you both.
I'm good. Jet lag and a cold for sure. Travel, conference, cold.
The standard trifactor of
Yep, of
2024, I guess.
awesomeness. This is how I awesome.
Well, I've just got a slight hangover after Search Awards and various other stuff, so I'm kind of feeling it as well. And I don't think my hair looks that bad. I think the hair looks good.
No, it has tamed in the last 10 minutes since we joined the call.
And I don't have a man bun, so, I win.
Well, that's debatable. Anyway, let's not add a fourth topic to be gentle. Today we're going to be going over some of the more pressing things in search. So Google Shopping's latest developments, announcements of what they're moving towards, the DMA changes, which Google are passive aggressively acknowledging as to what they're going to have to do to test. And then something which is a hot topic as we're recording right now, based off the back of Jess Peck's wonderful video, which I will be linking to in the description below, which I think is just a mandatory watch for anyone in SEO. We're asking the question, is ChatGPT a search engine? So to get the ball rolling, let's start off with Google Shopping. Cindy, over to you.
Yeah, so I saw this come out yesterday or be announced yesterday, and we all know that Google has been doing a lot more with Merchant Center and shopping. And if you look at the article, you can see that this incorporates Gemini, it incorporates PPC, as well as a lot of filters. And it says that it's going to allow you to pick up where you left off and ask specific questions that have implied consequences, like buying the example they give is buying a men's jacket for someone who lives in Seattle. So the implied consequence is it's rainy and windy and cold, so that the jacket needs to probably be waterproof and have a hood. So interesting, not unexpected. The example they give is nice looking. Yeah, I think like there were some snarky remarks that I agreed with on Twitter about like buttons, and would there be would there be like and dislike kind of buttons, and would those have roll down consequences to non-e-commerce search results? And my first thought is, well, yeah, of course. But then my second thought is, but like that assumes there's going to be such thing as a non-Google shopping e-commerce search result ultimately, and I'm not sure that's true.
No, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of the things they discussed in it, like, it was quite interesting. So they mentioned, I think it's in the first paragraph, I mentioned like virtual try-on. I remember doing a little video on that back in, I think it was April, May time when they first showcased it. And I'm interested to see that coming to life with fruition, because my experience of most AI in VR thus far with anything which is kind of like needs that level of accuracy has been lacking. It's kind of like had the same number of faces as like the 1997 Lara Croft Tomb Raider game. It's been a bit blocky.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting how that impacts the experiences. Lens integrations, I'm not too surprised to see further integration of, because I don't know if it's been the same over in the US, but especially in the UK, Lens and circle search have been a huge kind of USP in just trying to sell new Samsung and Google smartphones. That's been kind of like.
Are you using it? Circle search? Like, to me, no.
I use Google Lens a lot. I really do use Google Lens a huge amount. Even like last night, I was drinking a bottle of wine and I was like, oh, that's really nice. Quick button, Google search it, job done. Add it to kind of a list of things, which I'll never look at the list again. But I've now kind of added that particular wine to a list of wines that I like and various other stuff. So I think Google Lens is really impactful. And I think, without being horrible about Dan, I think watching kind of like the kids of today, the younger people of today, and how they're actually using technology, they're using it. They're really using it. They're not using Facebook, they're not using other things, but they are using this kind of visual search a lot more. And I think that's kind of a sign as to what people are going to be doing much more of in the future.
But not circle search, right?
I've been using Circle Search a lot. I've actually been using
Really?
Circle Search more than Lens.
Really? What for?
I'm not the most random stuff you can think of. So I'll be watching a video on YouTube on my phone, and I'll see like everything from products in it they're using, all the way through to those mountains and the scenery, whereabouts in the States. I watch a lot of like outdoor camping stuff, so whereabouts are they? So I'll put, because it's quick access on my phone, I'll do it. Even if I'm on Instagram, just on normal web pages, I'm using Circle Search quite a lot, even just to kind of get summaries from. I've used that probably more than Lens, to be honest.
I'm probably being dumb here, but what's the difference between Lens and the kind of circle thing? Because I mean, when I use Lens, I kind of just do a croppy bit area of it. I do have a Pixel phone, so I should probably know this. I'm sometimes the best person at using the weird features, and sometimes the worst.
Well, they're similar, right? It's all
Mm.
in image recognition database, but Circle Search is where you can like circle something that's on a web page. You don't have to take the picture.
Yeah, so say for example, let's use this example here. So I've just gone on to
Great
Go
Instagram.
buy that blazer.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, I want to know where that blazer's from, so I never end up in that shop. So on the pixel at the bottom, hold down there, and you get this little interface up, and all I'm going to do is circle Jerry and hit performance for search. So it's just more focused than Lens in that way.
But you were
Wait,
that result was, how do we buy Jerry White? How much?
I've had a few Etsy results come up, mod shopping, and Dolce Vita men. So
there you go. You guys are you more creative with your shopping than I'm a bit more traditional, I guess.
Oh, I never buy anything from it. It's pure research, and conjectural. But I'm using it a lot more for that, which I kind of think, yeah, it's just an enhancement on Lens. It's interesting how they're actually using Gemini to integrate into that now and try to enhance that further. And for me, the kind of flip side of this as well is the same question we're going to have. Can we see a breakdown in the data of who is discovering product pages and URLs through things like Circle Search versus a traditional search? And the answer is probably going to be the same as it was with voice search 8 years ago. No.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see what that disparity is.
But the other thing to recognize, the two things, the images that they have in this article about this launch show videos. So I think that they're pushing hard on integrating video and influencer kinds of content with shopping, which is kind of a natural progression of where the internet has been going, but also something that drives YouTube traffic and drives YouTube monetization, which keeps the ecosystem going. So that's interesting. And then the other thing is just this idea of Google being the world's like super affiliate, basically, where like when you're shopping and you click on something that's sold by a certain retailer, it still brings up a price comparison option, and you don't actually get to the landing page potentially ever. So they're hijacking all the traffic.
It is kind of interesting how I think they're seeing Amazon as a much more of a competitor than I think they were a while. Like if I'm buying something, I literally go straight to Amazon, try to find the product. I've got a kind of good baseline. Then I might go to Google. It is interesting that I go to Amazon first. If it's a weird and wonderful gizmo, I might even go to AliExpress first. But basically, depending on what it is, I mean, Dan's wedding presents straight from AliExpress. But basically, Dan's laughing because he knows it's true.
I love it. I still love it, though.
I forgot my point now. So basically, yeah, I literally go to those two places first. The fact that I don't do a lot of my shopping directly through Google is kind of interesting. If I want to, I mean, I've talked about e-commerce shopping for a long time, and my example is always like Bluetooth headphones, noise cancelling, the types, the different varieties, the ways in which you can kind of go down into it all and everything. But one of the things that I did find kind of interesting actually in that article was they talked about things like having it in your size. As a man who's got oversized feet and a fairly tall gentleman, I struggle sometimes to find stuff in my size. So the fact that they've got that, and they're going to integrate that with the electronic POSs, electronic point of sales, which has all the stock information, local information. It means this offline, online, all of this stuff that's happening. In my head, I'm like, this is a beautiful user experience if it all kind of works. And Google don't do the Google thing where they kind of try to monetize it excessively almost. And that's the kind of the fun kind of point.
I think the other side to it working as well is just it relies on an honest data set. So I'm sure everyone on here shopped on eBay will search for something, will order it lowest price to highest price, and we'll click on the first or two results, and it'll be, I don't know, the carrier bag it comes in being listed for the lowest price, and then the actual price being a different option. And that will greatly diminish the experience if it can't make that transition through. And the size thing is interesting. So I go back to my point about virtual try-on and things like that. It's going to be interesting to see how products may be misrepresented and how that impacts the commercial bikes. I know in the UK, there's a few online clothing stores who actively scan user reviews and ask for user feedback on fit, and then they try to communicate the fit back onto the product page just to say, well, like, it's true to size, it's smaller, it's bigger, longer, shorter, etc. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not even there's potential schema development before that, like, because of how, I mean, on the Tech SEO podcast, when I had a good conversation with Yarno, who is very active in the schema.org community, and he's pretty much said that for the past 3-4 years at least, there's been very little Bing or Yahoo involvement. It's kind of just like a Google ecosystem running the show there. So it'll be interesting to see if there's an implementation there. This is where it'd been useful to have Jono to then kind of go, yeah, but schema's just labels. So I'm just going to throw that in there as in honor of Jono, kind of throwing that back out there, I guess.
Jono did talk a long time ago about the fact that we're just training the machine, and he did a great presentation on it. I mean, I think this is 10 years ago. I think I'm starting to feel old now, the fact that I remember Jono's good presentations from 10 years ago. But basically, he did this amazing presentation that talked about the fact that we're just perpetually feeding the machine. And I think that schema and everything else is kind of an example of that. It's not the fact that it doesn't work. It's not the fact that it's bad or anything like that. It's just that Google used that as just one of the many, many, many inputs. And the really scary part is just how much they're now relying on shopping feeds for everything as well, which means that for organic marketers like us, who kind of don't really do the paid side of it, we've got to kind of go into Google Merchant Center far more than ever before and make sure everything's good. And going back to my headphones example, pink headphones, blue headphones, white headphones, all the different colors are all kind of marked up in the different ways. And if somebody was searching for any kind of minor variant, then it's up there, because if it's not, then we're going to lose on the traffic to the person who's actually got the better, more comprehensive feed.
Yeah, well, and then that also speaks to kind of the future of what Google would prefer, which is they have increasing costs all over the place with all of the AI stuff. And so they're looking to decrease costs where they can. And that means ingesting feeds rather than crawling randomly, right? Because when you ingest a feed, you know what's in stock and what's not in stock, and you know the price, and you don't have to wade through horrible JavaScript and whatever. You just get the information immediately, and that saves money in the long run, right?
Also, the immediacy of it. I mean, I've worked on feeds for Google on various things. One of it, Just Eat, we were working on some feeds. And, for Google to kind of recrawl the site when we had it as implemented using kind of a schema markup, it could be a week or so before it recrawled everything. If it was the feed, it was the next day. And we knew just how quickly Google was recrawling. It was surprisingly fast.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as fast as we'd like it if we needed to make a change or we needed to change something quickly. And, driving traffic to the wrong page was a bad thing for us. And the fact that Google's feeds, it's like, an hour later, suddenly we've updated everything. Suddenly Google's got this exceptionally up-to-date version of the web, or at least e-commerce information.
If you haven't played with Merchant Center, I suggest if you're an SEO, you should. They even have a Google Sheets integration that basically you just update the information in the sheet and it goes live. Like, it's pretty slick.
Merchant Center is definitely becoming. It's blurring the line between paid Google and normal, and
that's the goal.
Yeah. definitely. I completely echo that as well, Sydney. I'm encouraging people now to. I'd probably encourage people to learn Merchant Center over some of the more traditional SEO things at the moment, just from a longevity perspective, especially if e-commerce is reading the client portfolio or in the realm.
I think e-commerce and news are the two places Google's really going to need to pay attention. And actually, this is not just my idea. This is from Michelle Robbins, who's also very smart, who we should have on this podcast. But she and I were talking last night about, Google using AI to kind of mine all the information off the internet. And then what is the point of keeping all of the old pages if they're not being updated and they're not adding new information? And I've given this example many times before, but like not every dentist needs a page about flossing, and like Google can read 100 of those and kind of get it. So why would you keep those in the index if you can learn and understand what is flossing and explain it in AI? Like you can devalue or deprioritize crawling all of those like stale / evergreen, right? Like guidelines on flossing aren't changing on the daily. Like we don't need to recrawl that, but once a year maybe.
This kind of speaks to the whole movement towards like entities within AI and how it's learning as well, because like you just said there, not every dentist needs to have a flossing page indexed, but just needs to be enough signals for Google to understand that dentist entity offers flossing as a service, so we can at least stitch them together and present them as a potential option when needed in search if it leads that way.
Well, right. And the idea that every dentist was writing those pages is more indicative of a problem that Google had that we were helping them fix rather than, any actual need. Like for years and years, dentists exist without the internet, right? And just assuming that because they're dentists, they can help you with flossing.
Yeah, but they would have a poster on the wall saying about flossing, how to floss, how to do this, how to do the other, and all the rest of it. But
it's
some
the
of their
same poster that every other dentist has. It's not an invention of
No, I just think that we're taking the in-house, what do you call it, in real person kind of experience online a little bit and doing some. I do agree with a lot of people that we've kind of almost got to the point now we're focused on SEO so much that we're putting rubbish stuff up. But equally, we should actually be going back a step and going back to marketing and saying, this is what we're about, this is who we are, and all that kind of like, taking it to say, if it's written for SEO, then it's not always good. If it's written to kind of for marketing and generally to kind of present the brand and who we are and what we're about and good practice, bad practice, then it's kind of, because I'm going to browse around their website. I mean, my dentist down the road, I've never browsed around their website.
Are you? Would you read a dentist blog? Like, what are they talking about? Who cares?
No. I think it kind of speaks to, I think there's Will Reynolds who said this in the last month, 2 months, that the pandemic we have in SEO of just the crap we're putting out there is because we've, mostly as an industry over the last 2 decades, built it on traffics, rankings, a set of metrics, and the fuel to create those metrics has just been content, with content equals ranking, and now we're moving at a vapid pace away from that, just with how AI is being introduced. There's replacement competitors coming for Google. Just how people are even moving to not using Google full stop. There's kind of a Gartner stat kind of suggested.
Well, and back to shopping, I think, Jerry, your point about shopping searches are now starting elsewhere when they didn't before, right? They may have started in Google at one point, but now for places where Amazon and Amazon Prime exist, often they start there. And so what is Google going to have to do to get those initial queries back? And I think like a lot of what they're trying to do is helpful, but in my mind, they're not solving the main problem that Amazon does, which is friction with delivery, returns, and payment. Because like that's why I would pay more for something, just order it on Amazon, because I know if I don't like it, I can return it and I know where to return it, and I don't have to learn a new process, and I don't have to enter my credit card or any of that stuff. But shopping on Google, you still might, and the return policy, could still differ.
Yeah,
So
you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, it is exactly that. I mean, I order when I go to Amazon, I kind of go, right, when do I want it? Yep, make sure, tick the box which says like next day delivery. I tick the box which says 4-star plus reviews. And then I just kind of limit it down on the price to the price range, which I think it should be at. And then I kind of go, oh, these are the 20 products and this one, yep, click a button, ordered for tomorrow. And yeah, occasionally it doesn't work out and occasionally things go wrong. But 99% of the time, there's a huge stack of toilet paper over there where I kind of go, yep, need that for tomorrow. And say, yep, don't need to buy that for a while. It's, as you say, it's totally reducing the friction. And that is really, really important. And I don't think that Google will be able to kind of review all of the different ways in which you can order and the frictionless. And a similar example, I ordered an advent calendar like about 2 weeks ago, and it still hasn't arrived yet. And I've just kind of messaged the company and they went, oh yeah, we sent it out a couple of days ago. And I'm like, it's an advent calendar. I kind of wanted the advent calendar a week ago. It's disappointing that companies aren't as fast and smooth and as efficient. If everything was equal, Google would find it a lot easier to kind of say everything's equal. So therefore it doesn't matter who you order from.
Well, but the reason Amazon's able to do this is because of advantageous, delivery agreements with all of the major package delivery outfits, and because they have warehouses. And unless Google is going to start building warehouses and putting together a fleet, I think they're going to struggle on this main kind of point.
What's interesting in there as well is because you said about how shopping and news are going to be two things which Google want to focus on. I'm using this as a slight segue into the next topic as well, because we are 20 minutes in. So could that focus also be required because they're suffering in travel at the moment, especially through things like the Digital Markets Act for DMA? So I'm just going to give a quick summary of that so everyone who's aware of what we're going to be arguing about in the next 5 minutes. So the Digital Markets Act basically is requiring Google to significantly change and alter services in Europe. Google have released an article stating how this is going to lead to, I think it's about 20 different modifications in Google search to make them more compliant with what is wanted. And this is going to greatly change, especially things around comparison sites, visibility for things like flights, hotels. Shopping is included in there as well, but flights and hotels, especially in travel. And whilst removing Google SERP features around such like flight information, clickable maps, hotel comparison, that sort of stuff. They're initially going to be testing these in Germany, Belgium, and Estonia, in which the search results around flights, hotels, etc. will revert back to some more of a simpler, as Google have even phrased themselves, a 10 blue link format. They want to do this to assess the impact on user experience and website traffic first. If I think they're hoping it will arm them, going back and saying, no, this is bad. Google's blog nicely kind of takes a nice little book out of some other PR we've seen recently, and there is a very petulant little message at the end of how they're reluctant to remove what they call these helpful features, but they aim to comply with the DMA while maintaining innovation and user experience. What is interesting on this, before we go and discuss it, is the EU does have some legal precedent with this, because 2-3 years ago in Russia, Yandex had the same issue in which their features, known as the wizard features, had to be toned down because they were seen as anti-competitive in travel and shopping and non-promotion. So, Jerry, do you want to kick us off talking about this and the DMA?
I mean, I like this sort of fact that Google is kind of using feeds, using all the kind of information to present great results as a user. I mean, I can understand basically that Europe, the EU, and basically the DMA, basically the way in which they're kind of seeing this problem. I don't think that I'm kind of almost on Google's side here. I know how they're expressing it is very like we're going to kick our toys out the pram a bit, but I think Google have a responsibility to kind of be to their users first rather than necessarily to the businesses first. I say that, which is interesting because normally I'm on the business side because I always think that Google are a bit pushing their luck a bit as an SEO guy. But on this particular one, I think that a lot of the times what I really want to do is kind of go in there and find a price aggregator, and I want to be able to find the best price, and I want to be able to book it relatively easy. And I know 9 times out of 10, I will never go direct to a flight website because I don't know where the flight companies go to and from. So for instance, if I'm going to Vienna, I don't know which airlines go there, but if I go to Skyscanner, they kind of take all the information for me. And what's interesting is Google kind of work with companies like Skyscanner to represent the information better onto the search result pages. So I'm kind of feeling like Google are being slapped for something which it benefits the users. Cindy, you've probably got stronger opinions on this than me.
I do. So I think that you're right in that in some ways, like, people do like this aggregation directly from Google and find it useful. And that's kind of where Google's coming from. That's where this petulant tone comes from, is that they have created something that's valuable. The problem is, what happens is Google has copied a lot of the aggregators and basically taken their model out from under them. And while they might be working with Skyscanner now, they're going to be hijacking all of Skyscanner's traffic now, or in already, soon enough. And that's what's already happened with hotels and stuff like that. Now, there's an argument there that says that, Skyscanner was already hijacking someone else's traffic. They were hijacking the traffic directly to the airlines, and the airlines were irritated about that. And then Skyscanner came around and said, "Oh, we're going to put a downward pressure on prices because we're going to show them right next to each other." And then Google said, "Oh, well, we're going to aggregate the aggregators, and now you have to get even better deals." And so there's this downward pressure on prices, which is great for users and they love it. But the problem is that's the money has to come from somewhere. And so, especially in the airline industry right now, we've seen a lot of like scary airline incidents recently. And it's hard to directly say that it's because they're cutting costs to account for this downward pressure on prices, but maybe they're cutting costs to account for the downward pressure on prices. So that's one thing. But also the other thing is just that, like, once Google has taken over an industry like hotels or airlines or shopping, going back to the previous topic, and they've made they've fine-tuned everything so that they can be the resource, and they put all of their competitors out of business. Right? Like, let's say Skyscanner goes under because they're not getting any more traffic, or they're not getting the traffic they need to break even and keep people employed. That's when Google starts to add in advertisements and monetize that, because they've already put their competitors out of business. So there's no reason not to. And so it's not like this is a playbook that's already been used by Google 100 times. So there's arguments both ways. Yes, it's not a short-term play, it's a long-term play to hijack not just airline results and hotel results, but an entire industry of aggregators, and put them out of business. And that's what they're finding in the DOJ trials. And they're saying, like, this was a plan, and once you put those people out of business, that's when you monetize like crazy, because the searchers have no other option. But because all of the competitors are out of business. That's kind of the larger vision. Am I crazy?
I don't think you're crazy. I agree with a lot of us. I can see from both, because I used to work a lot. Well, I used to work for an agency which purely worked with travel clients. And I've worked for everything from like your mom pop cottage holidays all the way through to some of the big companies that were majorly affected by this. And I kind of agree. It's counterintuitive for me for user experience, because, like as Jerry said, I'm trying to book a flight for Zurich for next week to go to Search Central Live, and I'm actively using that function because it's quick and easy, and it loads quick, and it pulls through data. And my devil's advocate hat on this would be, if you're a smaller player in the market and you might not necessarily rank organically for those bigger terms people are searching for, like, I know, flights, Manchester to Zurich, you probably have a greater opportunity to be visible in these feeds and in the Google search functions than if you're ranking on, say, page 4 for direct term almost.
Yes, but that's by algorithmic design that Google search engine would prefer their aggregator over a small site that's an exact match, right? Wouldn't you, like, as a user, when you're searching, the ideal would be you find a direct match, right? And not have to sort through, like, do another search and more filters and whatever.
So I more mean, so say like you are, I don't know, you're Jerry Eyre, for example, and you
Jerry
offer
Eyre?
Jerry Eyre, yes. And you offer flights
Very
Manchester
premium.
to Scotland. Yeah. Algorithmically, anyway, if you take out all the aggregators, even if like you remove that function now, you might still be on page 3 or page 4 because Wizz, Vueling, British Airways, Virgin, they all have a better SEO program. They rank page 1, page 2. You're not visible. But in that aggregator, if you've got the feed going into there, there's a chance you may be appearing in that aggregator that Google has.
Yeah.
So even so that's what I'm kind of saying from a smaller company perspective. There's opportunities. It's really that bigger play in. I mean, I think there was a statistic. It was 2-3 years ago. It might have been pre-COVID. Actually, it might have blurred. So like Booking.com was spending something like $1 billion a quarter on Google advertising, and yeah, there's going to be pressure on them to reduce that cost.
But there's also, I mean, the pressure is coming out in the airlines as well, where now you have to, in some cases, pay to get a text message if your flight time changes or if your flight's delayed. Like, oh, would you like a text message? That'll cost you $3. That's ridiculous. Like, that's a baseline service that should be included. But all of these nickel and diming so that they can look like the lowest price in the aggregator is another kind of subtle fallout that we've all kind of taken on board and said, well, that's just life. Well, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, no, and we're seeing it even more in the UK than even like Ryanair, an airline who tend to get the most publicity around this. I'm 99.9% sure we're probably only about a year away from there being a news story in a red top in the UK saying that Ryanair are going to charge you for the oxygen that you're breathing whilst you're on the plane.
Right. And if you would like a seat without French fries on it, that'll cost you extra as well.
Thing is, the guy loves that publicity. It's almost like we do it as cheap as possible. You know, we have these options. So, you know, you want to pay more for it, you can pay more for it. And they get the coverage. And whilst we don't love Ryanair, we know that if you're going to go to Zurich for $5, that's going to be Ryanair. If it's $10 Wizz Air and $120, it's going to be British Airways.
I know you're a bargain shopper, Jerry, and that's cool. So am I. But when monopolies monopolize, like, the money comes from somewhere. And it's what we're seeing is it's from basic cleaning of airplanes, basic services like getting a text message, and at some levels, like potentially safety concerns in the airlines, right? Or maybe that's just a larger Boeing thing, but Boeing is part of that ecosystem, right? Like, companies have to make money, and when there's a monopoly making that harder, the cuts come from somewhere.
When I was at another company, I won't mention which one it was, but basically we had a similar situation with Google turning around and saying, we can actually basically replace you. You just have to give us a feed, so we don't need you anymore, and therefore we can replace what you do. They would basically make one-click ordering of takeaways where from the search results. And I remember sitting there kind of at a strategy meeting kind of going, Google basically want us to kill ourselves in effect.
Yes.
And then they can even add a cost to it, so as we don't even make any money from it, because the cost that we charge to our end users for supplying this facility is then taken by them, and they can increase it, and then we'd pass it on. And then basically, you know, takeaways or whichever company it was that I was working at would basically be looking at making zero money, and therefore they'd be increasing the costs through that. It basically would be a sort of spiral downwards. And you're absolutely right. So yes, it is a bad thing. And that is why I do truly like the idea of kind of going to different shops and kind of shopping around.
But this is why the DMAs come in, right?
Yeah.
Like this is all to defend the actions that seem reasonable to me by the DMA to say like, hey, let's think about this. And Google's saying we're going to run a test, and of course we all know how the results of the test are going to come out, because they've done this before. When it was the DMA or someone in the EU didn't like the news results and said that the Google was stealing IP from the different companies that were producing the news. So Google said, no worries, we will have these news carousels, but we'll remove the image and we'll remove the headline, and we'll just show you who wrote a story about this topic. And of course, the clicks on those carousels went down 80% that week, right? We know how this is going to turn out. Google's just being more of a petulant child here. They're not actually going to play the game. They're going to be like, we have results. People love this. Screw you guys.
Yeah.
The numbers in the kind of DMA summary, the accusation is the Google adjustments, if you like, they're actually reducing traffic to direct teeth backing. So reducing the features which Google said they're going to reduce in this test. Apparently, they believe it's going to affect direct traffic like airlines, hotels, and small retailers by about 30%, but it will greatly benefit the larger comparison sites. I think inversely, it will benefit the comparison sites because some people like us who want that quick exchange of information will work, but
do you think what they're saying is that in that case it'll decrease direct traffic to these retailers? Are they saying that ranking in Google, even if you don't get the click, is a branding play?
That would be my. I mean, that is I think it's an interpretation of that it being a brand touch point, but also I think Google are trying to say that by having this special feature, you can have any budget in the world as long as you have a feed. You kind of are on a level playing field, which, from a Google perspective, it's an argument. they need as many as they can have, but it does kind of very much feel like you're just going to damage the underdog if you do this and like play into the hands of Goliath here.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and that's what the DMA was built to protect, right? So that you don't have to play into the hands of the lion.
Yeah. So it's interesting how that will play out. And I mean, let's be honest, will we ever see the transparent data? I mean, we might do in a few years, but through legal disclosure, but will we actually see the true data from the German, Belgian, and Estonian tests on this? I also think it's interesting that they chose those markets as well. Because
Estonia.
because Estonia is like Tallinn, and it's not the biggest European country. Germany, okay, but I mean,
It's a big country, Germany.
It is a big country, but I'd also argue that the travel habits necessarily of Germans, Belgians, and Estonians aren't. And I picked slightly different countries with different demographic travel habits and different changes and stuff.
Like right, during Christmas as well.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
Very
weird decisions, because Christmas will, like, December travel will always be an outlier. Like,
it's usually going to be going somewhere because you need to go somewhere. Like, I need to fly to X to see family. I need to fly to Y for X reasons. It's not usually I'm just going to take a 2-week vacation over Christmas because it's got it. Unless you're bargain shopping and you want to go when no one else is and it's cheap. But
well. And whatever numbers
play around in SimilarWeb to see what happens in SimilarWeb actually over the next few weeks and see what, because I don't think we're going to see as much of a difference as Google says they will, but I think it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. What I was going to say though is whatever numbers they come up with about the loss of money, well, it's going to be high because prices for flights in December are always high, especially in Eastern Europe and Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
It's me going to the Christmas markets.
Of course it is. You gotta get.
So, on my note, moving on to my third topic, we are 40 minutes into this one. We'll do right. 10 minutes a topic. That's fine. No. We just need Jono here to shout and find the developers and that fixes it. So, the final topic we wanted to kind of go over is inspired very much by Jess Peck's video that she's put out on YouTube, I believe. Last kind of basically I think the title of the video is effectively, "Oh my God, ChatGPT is not a search engine." And I've watched it a couple of times. I say watched it, listened to it a couple of times. It's a very visual, circa 2004 word art in there. It filled my soul greatly. But essentially, the kind of crux of it is generative AI, including ChatGPT, should be treated as a tool for generating ideas and actual information. I urge you to watch the video itself. The link is in the bio, but essentially, Jess covers a number of elements, such as it isn't a search engine or a database. It does not know anything. There's a great breakdown with her own lightweight version of ChatGPT she built together. And using it for research can actually lead to a lot of misinformation as it tries to fabricate informational prompts, because effectively ChatGPT is a yes man. The failures Jess highlighted, including Jess called out a few flexes as well from the internet on how people were claiming they were doing some really great stuff. Some of this was around they uploaded some images of NBA players and asked them to auto tag it, and it got Michael Jordan and Steph Curry confused. It invented Hugo Trump as a fake Trump family member. And it even gave misinformation around the Joe Biden, Hunter Biden pardoning by creating, I think it was Hunter de Butts as a fake person, which is wonderful as a name. I also appreciate as well, I might have been lagging over the last 2 minutes. I had a warning light come up, but hopefully everyone else's feeds will work, because StreamYard is good and is meant to do this, and that's why I pay for premium. So having watched the video, Jerry and Cindy, what's your initial take on this? Is ChatGPT a search engine?
Yeah, no. So I think we're in this world at the moment where we really have to stop kind of going, is it a search engine, yes or no? And I say that because I generally have done a lot more, not research, but like I use Perplexity a lot. I mean, without going into details, I've got a pro license because my mobile phone provider, cell phone for you, Cindy, basically has given me this year for free. So I use this perpetually. It's called Perplexity, and basically it allows me to just kind of go, if I'm writing an article or I'm doing something and I'm researching stuff, that's where I go first. I now actually use Perplexity for everything that I would have used Google for when I'm kind of doing research. And it has links to sources, so it has all of that information. And I know that anytime it's interpreting something, it could get it wrong. I'm always amused by the fact that, I was playing around with it earlier on based on that video. And it said I've got like 5 degrees or something. And I'm there kind of going, yep, that's brilliant. Yep, I've got 5 degrees. I don't know what my degrees are in, but, I've definitely got 5 degrees. Weirdly enough, it actually seemed to know that I'm 6'4", which is kind of confusing because I am 6'4". And when I asked it how it knew, it said, I don't really know. I sort of guessed. And it's like, how did you kind of guess that? Dan mentioned the fact that there's been references to it on social media and all sorts of other pieces, but I wouldn't use ChatGPT as a search engine, but more of a research discovery engine to kind of help me formulate how research things. Perplexity has now got some kind of e-commerce integration as well, which I've not played with yet, but I will be probably playing with in the future. So no, it's not a search engine, but does that matter by the traditional definition? Are we actually in a world where if we're researching something, we'll go to Perplexity? If I'm writing code, I'll use make.com. If I'm doing something different, I'll use the tool rather than the search engine to kind of get started. I know this is going to make me sound like I'm a lot younger than I actually am, but I use TikTok a lot for research as well. Like if I'm going to Vienna, I'll go to TikTok to kind of have a look at the restaurants, the bars, the places to go, what I should be seeing, the experience, even things like the weather and stuff. Go on, Cindy.
Are you going to Vienna soon? You keep mentioning it.
Oh no, I've just come back from Vienna.
Okay.
I went to the subcon. You're going there next year, aren't you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'll go.
I thought you would. I'm sorry. I thought I saw you listed there. Don't worry. Carry on. I get distracted easily.
I probably am. I probably said yes to that.
No one asked me, so I'm not going to Vienna. So it's interesting you mentioned using it for kind of research stuff, because I mean, in Jess's very comprehensive but nicely delivered breakdown, Jess talks about how the GPT basically operates on probabilities. and it uses probabilities to predict the next word, and it uses functions like weighted die and temperature, which is like a randomness sense. A high temperature has high randomness and leads to inaccuracies or hallucinations, as we call them, and the low temperature settings work and there's misunderstanding of prompts, fabrication. I mean, one thing which is interesting is I have just done a couple of searches whilst we've been here talking to ask you how tall you are, but I did it as how tall is Jerry White? Cite your sources, and it came back and told me that you were 5'11", but you were also born in 1970 something in Bells Hill in Scotland, and you were a Scottish footballer. So I think it's
There might be
complete.
multiple people called Jerry White. I'm slightly annoyed by the fact that at one point, when I thought as an SEO guy, you basically want to rank for your own name. But then there was a guy called Jerry White who got murdered in the Isle of Wight, who basically it involved a chainsaw which ran out of petrol, and then he got strangled. So the problem there is the fact that that's such a interesting kind of news topic that I can't outrank him by being quite a boring SEO nerd.
Also, unfortunately, as well, because I'm repurposing it, there is also a Gerald White, born in December 1964 in Florida, who is a former running back for the Cowboys. And he's also 5'11".
I was going to say, how tall is he?
Yeah. But I literally asked the question, how tall is Gerald White? And I've got back his place of birth, his height, his weight, some information about the career, and I've got no idea if anything is true. So,
well, and it's answering questions that you didn't ask.
Yeah.
It's adding color when it wasn't requested.
But is he doing that because I'm asking the same question multiple times in different chats, and he's kind of going, oh dear, why does he keep asking this? I need to give more. I've just gone on Wikipedia, so as accurate as Wikipedia is, it is correct.
That Wikipedia page isn't about me. The Jerry White in the Wikipedia is the Irish entrepreneur who had a pin company that I can't seem to outrank. But Dan, I like the fact that now you think that this LLM, which is not a search engine, it's just a word prediction engine thing, has an opinion about how insane you are.
It's concerned about you and your well-being, so it gives you longer results.
It's not necessarily. I don't think it's necessarily because it doesn't know anything. It's not learning. I think what it's processing is a case of if this question's been asked multiple times, I'm not doing something right. And if we work on the basis, as Jess has said in the video, it's a yes engine. It wants to constantly be positive. It wants to be good. It's got the biasing. It's kind of like when someone asks a question and you give an answer and they just stay silent, looking at it like it's like in your brain, you kind of go, either they're processing the answer or they're expecting more answer, and you just default to more answer and you just start talking and talking and talking, kind of like how I am now. It kind of feels like it's doing that, but not consciously. It's just because that is how it is trained to be.
Yeah, totally could be. Who knows? That would mean that it's learning, not just learning things, but learning social etiquette, which I guess it does. Like, it'll apologize if you tell it it's hurt your feelings.
It doesn't know how tall you are, though, Cindy, but it has told me about Mobile Moxie.
Oh, good.
And however, her height is not publicly available information.
Yeah, because I wear high heels sometimes. It's all over the place. Nobody knows.
Jerry does the same thing. That's why he's 6'4". What are your thoughts on this, Cindy, after watching Jess's video?
Yeah, so I agree with Jess on almost everything, except that Jess's alternative is to go to Google, and I don't think Google is as much as an unbiased source either. So anymore, I think Google used to be a more unbiased source, or at least it used to be more biased towards Wikipedia, which was somewhat an unbiased source. But do you remember those days when Wikipedia ranked for everything? That's gone now. Like, and Wikipedia was a pretty unbiased source, or at least it had mechanisms for human editing and fact checking and things like that. So, all in all, yes, I agree with what Jess is saying. I think that if we start to think about search engines and databases as one thing, and a chat agent or an LLM as a presentation layer, that's a healthier way of looking at these things, except that, ChatGPT did launch their search thing, right? Like they've announced this thing that's gonna be a search engine, but the question is like, where is their database? Where are their data centers? And what information are they banking on? But then the other thing that I will bring up every time I can with LLMs is like, so many people, especially SEOs, ask LLMs for things that do not require a generative response, and in fact would not benefit from a generative response. Like either it knows how old Jerry is or how tall Jerry is, or it does not, right? And it should tell you when it doesn't know.
Does it? But given by the nature of the hallucination side of it, and and that isn't a hallucination, is it cognizant of when it isn't hallucinating? Because if it is cognizant of when it's not, it goes away from being an LLM to basically just a.
You're breaking in and out slightly, hoping the recording will kind of fix it. But one of the things I would say is that ChatGPT is getting a lot better at not hallucinating. The amount of times where, in the original time, it was almost like every single time we'd kind of go, I don't know why you've made that up. But now I don't believe that as much. Normally, if I use ChatGPT or Perplexity or whichever one I use, I don't find it making things up like the six-legged horses and the snakes with legs and the things that were kind of hilarious. The cheese,
Jess's example, she causes it to make things up, right? Like the fake Trump relative or whatever.
It's because it's trying to almost write the narrative rather than necessarily kind of reference facts, and I think that's kind of quite interesting. And like I say, Perplexity is the one I use, and I think that with the moment we're still in ridiculously early days. The fact that a couple of years back I actually did a podcast with Jono and said ChatGPT is going to be huge, and then a short while later it was way bigger than I ever predicted it was going to be. I thought it was going to be kind of impactful because of what the kind of the limited demos that we saw. But what we're seeing today, and with Gemini and with Claude and with I've forgotten which one's Twitter's new one, sorry, X's new one, and all of these different ones, all of these different services that are coming out that are another ChatGPT thing, and they're competing so fast and they're doing so much more. And like I keep finding another tool. I keep bookmarking tools basically to go and try, and I swear I've not tried half of them yet because there's another tool which I've just bookmarked, and I'm on TikTok kind of going, oh, that looks really cool, and I go off and research it, and then 10 minutes later I couldn't remember which one it is because there's so much coming out so fast, and it does such amazing stuff. But the key part about this is the fact that we're really very much in early days. In 6 months' time, we're going to see a significant improvement again. And I think we're actually going to be paying for it. My view basically is that we're going to stop using search engines as much, and most of us will be subscribing to a tool that we can trust. Maybe 18 months.
And so far you would subscribe to Perplexity.
Yeah.
Even though Google knows more about you.
One thing I will say which is interesting is just the ability and speed of some stuff. So I, working with a client, published a Wikipedia page on the 25th of November. So only like a couple of weeks ago. It's still no indexed in Wikipedia of the editors with all the bar and stars, and so even though it's no index, Google hasn't accessed it. On the 26th of November, I went into ChatGPT and just randomly said, like, who is the client's brand name, page as a source, and referencing it directly and quoting it directly less than 24 hours after publishing. So there is a speed to it. And I think if they can narrow that down, it's that. I think the other side of this kind of like the same debate that happened when TikTok started becoming more prominent, people calling TikTok a search engine, and we kind of had that debate. Are we some parts just applying a familiar a language something and actually understanding it's a different way of people interacting with the internet. It's a different way of people engaging with stuff, similar to how radio and TV advertising different. It's not the same.
Maybe, but the people aren't interacting with it because they're bored and they want a good conversation. They're interacting with it because they're trying to learn something. And the idea about the hallucinations, but the like compellingly presented hallucinations, is scary, right? And so the idea that comes up is this like post-truth world, like whatever you publish on the internet then gets learned by all the LLMs and becomes truth whether we like it or not. And then even if it wasn't published anywhere, the LLM can make something up and then someone republishes that and the snake eats its tail. And this is, you know, a hugely existential concern. Well, I would say a huge concern that is also existential. Like what are we and what are we creating, and is it good, and could we back out of it if we wanted to? All, you know, problems that SEO wasn't designed to address. I mean, but it shows the kind of lack of fidelity to the truth that the whole world and especially SEOs are kind of cool with, like that they would just use an LLM that is known to hallucinate to research facts and hope for the best.
Yeah,
I think
I agree with you on that. The kind of the, what's the word for it? The fact that we're spiraling into machine created copy from machine created copy from machine created copy. Eventually, it's just going to break down into garbage, and that's quite fun.
Yeah, model collapse. It's got a name.
That's the one. Yeah.
So on that note, I think we'll close. What I might do is I might reach out to Jess and see if they want to come on a future episode of this and just come. I mean, yeah, I'm just going to sit back and not get involved in that one too much. So this recording of the SEO Huddle. Once again, if you have an opinion on anything we've discussed today, please do let us know in the comments or just reach out to one of us. And I mean, we have an open seat today. We're always open expressing opinions. Just reach out and we'll literally take anybody at this point. You're the one who looks concerned about that. Just keep shopping for replacements. But so on that note, if you have enjoyed this, please do drop a like and please do consider subscribing to the channel. The links in the description below. You'll find the Mobile Moxie YouTube channel as well as links to some of the videos and articles we've discussed. Hopefully my internet connection has withheld and it's not been like Archie's in the coffee shop a few episodes ago. Thanks, Cindy. Alfie. Did I say Archie? Alfie. Oh, it's really bad, but I've met him so many times and I never get his name right. He's one of the ones who doesn't stick. So if you enjoyed, Cindy and Jerry for making time, and wish you all the very best. Thank you very much for watching.